Yeah, yeah. But we can also, in the meantime, find out about, one's interest and background, how much you know about astrology. Are
Okay.
you astrologers, or do you pay attention to your own sun signs or the lunar cycles, just to get an idea of what you all know?
Okay. Yeah. We could start. Jarve, do you know anything? What's
I'm not really, I'm like kind of new to about astrology and learning about it. So I'm really like interested in learning like about like the signs and like everything that comes with like astrology, like the basics.
Okay, very good. And you, Eve?
Hi. Well, yeah, very little. So I check my horoscope every day, but I need all the resources and guidance I can get. But I'm Cancer, so I do try to like pay attention to the moon cycles, and I just not too long ago realized what my moon sign was.
awesome?
So that was enlightening, because I tended to have more of those characteristics than the sun sign, it seemed. So I guess I'd be interested to understand how those sort of integrate.
Awesome. Me, I've always been into astrology. I'm a Cancer also. Yeah, and my moon sign is Sagittarius, and I do have a lot of the Sagittarius Spitfire, and always been independent and things like that. So I always try and get the best of the best to teach astrology. So I always follow. Now I'm following Stephen, who's one of the best of the best. And so that's why I wanted to bring him in. So although I like astrology, I'm always open to learning more, because I don't consider myself an expert at all. But so, yeah.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
My moon is also in Sagittarius.
Oh, nice.
And the full moon was in Sagittarius this time.
That's
so,
right. That's right.
Yeah,
Really
it's
cool.
amazing.
My mood was up and down.
You felt it. Yeah.
I definitely felt it.
My goodness. And otherwise, I'm a Capricorn, and I'm always learning something more about astrology. There's never enough to learn about it. So it's quite a complex subject, actually. So I'm glad to have Stephen to share with me.
And understand.
Yeah, my goodness, yeah.
A man who understands our moods.
I like a big ocean,
Yep.
kinds of things that one can learn. It's like amazing. You never learn enough. Never know enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm a Scorpio with a Capricorn moon, and so that makes a lot of water so far that I'm hearing in this group, and that opens up the things connected to intuition, spirituality, divination, and mysteries.
That's cool.
And Joyve, what's your sun sign, and your moon?
I don't know my moon sign, but I'm in Aries.
Ooh.
So that's a fire sign.
Fire.
You know that you could, that you could get, there's lots of free online charts. You have your date, time, and place.
I'm gonna do that next week with them. Yeah.
Because that'd be really, of course, very useful. It really expands things, understanding what I call the big three: the sun, the moon, and the rising sign.
She's fire, and you gotta see, she's tiny. She's a little spitfire. She's so cute. Yeah.
Yeah, I did the same thing in Virginia Beach with a, we were all also looking at astrology there in January and February, and then that was the end of that.
Yep.
It's been a strange time, huh?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I'm surprised they're not here because they all wanted to know like how the moon affects us, how the retrograde affects us, and how everything affects us. So I'm like, I'm gonna put a class together with Stephen, and we're gonna know everything that affects us.
Yeah, because I don't know anything about retrograde. I mean, I've heard it mentioned before, but I have no idea what that is.
That's why I brought Stephen on.
Okay, good. Well, I see got my work cut out for me, and I'm gonna have to take probably a broad picture then first. I might as well get started. And take a look at you know, the different ways that one can approach this really interesting art. And there's a historical perspective. One can take a look at it from the analysis of one's chart, looking at the static round circular horoscope that everybody has and can calculate, and then make interpretations from that, being able to understand your own personality and likes and interests and talents and abilities. All of that can be seen in your natal chart. But then once you have that chart, which is kind of like a static picture of a time, date, and place, then of course the planets, moon, Mars, Mercury, they keep on going. And so there is a dynamic movement, you know, just like here yesterday, where we had that eclipse, a lunar eclipse, where there was whenever you have an eclipse, you have a lineup of the sun, the moon, and the earth. And it's wonderful to have these images and a divine dance, a cosmic dance in the sky. I'm going to share a couple of different images and pictures as I go along. And so what I'll do is kind of give an overview of different things, a few different perspectives and ways to look at it from this perspective, from that perspective, and from the heart, from the mind. And there's many different ways that one can approach this wonderful art. And then now and then, of course, I'll then be asking for some questions, perspectives, and maybe some examples. But I'm going to go ahead and start off with sharing the screen of some images that I have. Oh, can you turn on the sharing of the screen, Jean? It's a lovely picture from NASA, and of course it's that magic moment when the moon goes exactly over the face of the sun. And this is a lovely picture, not only because it's taken from a spacecraft over the earth, looking at that alignment of the moon right in front of the face of the sun, but you see the fire energy all around this particular picture. And this, by the way, was a picture, I think, from 2017. And that is, of course, the corona. And what's the middle of the news for 2020? But the coronavirus. Wow. And the corona is the crown, and that is the crown around the sun. And you all can see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, we have got with every eclipse an alignment of the sun, moon, and earth. And in this particular perspective, it's from a satellite. But if you were on the earth, you had, of course, a great telescope and being able to see it this clearly, you would indeed see the eclipse that way. It would have to go exactly on the right, also a placement upon the earth geographically, and then you would see that. What we had, of course, this is a eclipse of the sun when the moon goes right over, the face of the sun. And something quite magical about that too. The moon is approximately 300 times smaller than the sun, but the sun is 300 times further away. And so with this kind of like magical dynamic, and that's what you really see with astrology, just how perfectly they line up like that, that how huge the sun is, how small the moon is, but with that particular distance, isn't it like miraculous?
Yeah.
That moon is exactly the same size as that sun, so far away. When it is a picture like this, the sun, of course, is a little bit bigger than the moon, which is why you can see the corona around it. And sometimes, you know, depending upon how, whenever the eclipse happens, if it's going to be a little bit closer, a little bit further away, and then the moon will totally encompass all of the light of the sun. I particularly like this image, of course. Not only is it beautiful, but it really shows that wonderful lineup of energies. And when we take a look at our sun sign, and we all know our sun signs, then this is the basic energy. And as I said at the very beginning, the big three in any understanding of your own chart or anybody else's chart is the sun, the moon, and the rising sign, in that particular order. And so here is the sun, and right now, of course, it's Gemini time. It's the 6th of June, and pretty soon we're going to be going into another interesting annual alignment into the summer solstice, and that's when the sun will leave Gemini. Every sign has 30 degrees, and then it will go into the next sign of Cancer, and that always happens here during the summer solstice. And of course, that's summer here up here in the north, and it's winter down in the south of the equator. So the sun itself is shining forth our basic essence, our individuality, how we wish to express ourselves in the world, and the different ways that with our interests, talents, abilities, and so forth, it's going to describe our basic sun sign, you know, and it's divided into a couple of different patterns to make it a little bit easier for us to analyze it, make comparisons with the other sun signs, and some of those patterns can be, let's say, the elements. And right now it's Gemini, which is an air sign. The next sign coming, as I said here, is going to be in Cancer, and that's a water sign. And then it goes after that into Leo, which is a fire sign, like Aries. And then it will go into then an earth sign after that, Virgo. And it continues, then after Virgo, it goes back into another air sign. So there are these really interesting and useful patterns and that's of course just, you know, when I talk about that, I'm just talking about the path of the sun. And the sun goes through the 12 signs of the year and in those different elements. So that's just one way of looking at it. And of course, that takes 365 days for the sun to go around the whole zodiac. And the moon, right here in front of this picture here, right in front of the sun, it takes 28 days to go around the zodiac. And it too will go into all 12 signs of the zodiac. And each of those, what you look at it from an element perspective, from the basic signs itself, we also have the modes, and the modes are yet another division of the signs, starting off with the cardinal signs, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Cardinal means it just begins it. And those are the signs that begins equal with the equinoxes or the solstices. And so that begins this new phase, a cardinal phase. Then the next mode thing would be going into the fixed signs. And there's 4 of those. And then again, after that, it goes into the mutable signs. And I won't go into that right now, but just to let you know that whether we take a look at the signs themselves, there's 12 of them, or the elements, we have 4 of those, or the modes, there are 3 of them, and it makes this really interesting geometrical dynamic and helping us to further identify and to really understand these fascinating signs and how they all interact with each other, how they're similar to some and how they're quite different to others. Of course, we're talking about, our perspective from the Earth, our little solar system, one little star amongst the Milky Way in one of the many different galaxies in the cosmos. It's so vast, it's so unimaginably dynamic and huge that, one can get certainly lost in that, and many astrophysicists probably love to just wonder all the different ways that we can go. But here we are in our solar system, and this is where we really take a look at our neighbors. And notice here with this nice picture here how huge the sun is. I've got another image here just to show you the real differences in size between all of these different things. But yeah, the huge sun in the middle. And then, can you see my cursor over here? The sun, can you all see that? So then the closest planet to the sun is Mercury right there. And Mercury deals with communications, informations. It wants to go back and forth and share, and it can understand and gather ideas, information, news, and so forth from all of the different planets. It is the messenger god. And so in anybody's chart, your Mercury is going to be how you express yourself, how you communicate things, how you want to get ideas out, whether you're going to be on the phone all the time or on your device, on your even on the computer right here using your Zoom. Mercury is going to be involved with things like that. And just as a quick addition to that, many people talk about Mercury retrograde, and all the planets will have their direct movement and then they retrograde or reverse movement, and that's only from our perspective on the Earth. It just looks like they are. Of course they aren't. It just in comparison, they just look like they're going back and forth. So don't worry about Mercury retrogrades. I was born with Mercury retrograde, and you can calculate it again in your own charts to find out where it is, what sign it is, if it's moving direct or backwards. And it all has a meaning. It's not like good or bad. It's just like, what does it mean and how does it work? And so the Mercury retrograde is, I think, and it usually is 3 times a year for about 3 weeks per retrograde. I think it's a great time to get your files in order, your records, go over things that you had promised. It's great for editing. It's good for like going back over stuff that you said, oh, I'll do that later. Well, when it's retrograde, that's later. It's time to do it. It's great. And then you start rethinking things and closely look at, oh, what did I do? What was the intention here? And I said, oh, I'll put this over here on the side because I'll get to it later. Well, Mercury retrograde, it's now the time. Get everything in order. Get all of your files in order. Edit your photos and things like that. Double check on your appointments. That's just a really good time to use wisely this Mercury retrograde. Sometimes people find it difficult, or they find their, let's say, worries connected to these retrogrades, because you make an appointment when Mercury is going direct, but the appointment time was when it was retrograde. And then new ideas come in, or somebody else has another plan, and then you don't get together, and they say, oh man, what a mess. No, as soon as it goes retrograde, and one can look it up in any calendar, and there's lots of these online programs that you can figure this out. Once it goes retrograde, then you confirm the appointment, and then there's no problem. So anyway, so that's Mercury. Then the next planet out from the sun is Venus. And here is the feminine Venus, the goddess Aphrodite, beauty, aesthetics, art, music, culture, balance in many different ways. And then the third one out is here we are in the Earth. And you see the little moon next to the Earth. And that is also oftentimes not placed in your horoscope. People don't even put the Earth into your chart, even though like it's a pretty big important thing. Here we are in the flesh, in the third dimension, right here upon the Earth. And so that's one thing that I do when I take a look at charts. I put the Earth in the chart. And the Earth is always exactly opposite the sun. And so here right now, the sun is in Gemini. And so the Earth is opposite sign over in Sagittarius. And then when the sun goes into the next sign of Cancer, the Earth will be going into the next sign of Capricorn. It is a Earth-Sun dance. And you'll really understand your own sun sign by also understanding the opposite sign, which is where the Earth is. So it's a really interesting thing. And of course, at the same time, then the moon, again, will go around the Earth. And as I said, 28, 29 days it takes to go around the Earth. We go out further here, and then here is Mars. And you see that there is certainly a distinction between these planets from Mars in, and then those planets outward on the other side of Mars. They're in a different area. And so they're divided in what's called the personal planets: Mars, Earth, Venus, Mercury, personal. We add the moon and the sun, very personal. And this tells us a lot about our daily interests. What do we really want? What tendencies do we really like? What kind of foods? What are our pleasures? What are things we're wanting to feel secure about or not? That's very personal. And so really understanding these personal planets really will help you to understand a lot of things about, what makes you tick. Obviously, Mars is the sign of man, and the symbol is the sign of man. It's masculine, muscles, movement. Let's get things going. Let's go, let's go. And those are, as I said, the inner planets. You'll notice here that there's a bunch of asteroids here. This is the Great Asteroid Belt. I believe that there used to be a planet there, and I call it Osiris. And that was, the Egyptian god that was cut up into many different parts, and it certainly was cut up. There is some astronomical debate about, did it ever become a planet, or was it a planet? And then maybe it was hit at some point with some sort of asteroid, and now it's just totally a Humpty Dumpty story. And I personally use a couple of the largest asteroids in that belt, and I have them connected to the sign Virgo. And Virgo is an earth sign that's very interested in particulars, sometimes nitpicking, sometimes categorizing, sometimes all the different things that you have to do. And when I think of that, I think of, yep, there are 5,000 asteroids out there. There's a lot of little things to do. We move on out here then into Jupiter, and now we're going into the social planets. And Jupiter is connected to expansion, big things, big ideas, international perspectives, going from one country to another, having an interest in another language. I believe that in this little group here, we have quite a few languages that are spoken. And that you can say, oh, I wonder where Jupiter is. It probably is a prominent position in your chart. It's lucky, it's positive, it loves humor and adventures, and let's get on that jet plane. You know, that is Jupiter, and so it's really going to be nice to find out where is Jupiter in your chart. We then go out to Saturn, another social planet, and it shows up here with rings. They have found through NASA and Hubble that some other of our planets also have rings, but they're not so prominent or so visible as with Saturn. And the rings kind of represent the restrictions or the parameters here with Saturn. And there are rules and regulations. There are authority and authority figures, and it represents those places in your own psyche, your own personality, that you are kind of dragging your feet. You may not want to have movement where you find your Saturn placement, but movement you must have. So it represents the change that happens in a place that might be good for you, but it's a bit like, you know, when you're sick and you have to take some medicine and the medicine is bad.
Yep.
Well, you know, you're going to feel better about this later, but right now you may not get, you know, or you break a bone,
Yeah.
you know, have to be in a cast, you're restricted, but you're healing, you know. So you think about that with Saturn. Saturn takes 29 years to go around the zodiac. Jupiter takes 12. And these are the cycles that everybody deals with, as well as what we deal with also in society. Beyond Saturn, then we have we're talking about now the transpersonal planets. These are dealing more with larger vistas, philosophy, social psychology, anthropology, big ideas, worldwide sorts of things, and things that have gone beyond the social into transpersonal, which includes spirituality. The first one here is the planet Uranus, and that was discovered in 1781. And it is the electrical, exciting, technological, innovative, revolutionary planet, Uranus, that was discovered, as I said, in 1781, the midpoint between the American and the French revolutions. It's also the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So it loves gadgets, technology, science, engineering, as well as astrology and intuition and psychic phenomena. It is an extremist planet, and it loves to have that distinction. Is it white? Is it black? Is it cold? Is it hot? Uranus really likes these distinctions. After that, then we have Neptune, another gas giant, another transpersonal planet. And in that placement in your own chart, you'll find out a little bit more about your intuition, your empathy, that sensitivity, interest also in whodunits, like detective novels and things like that, as well as mysteries and larger movements like idealistic utopian dreams. Very Neptunian, very inspiring, but also a bit nebulous. You know, very much like Uranus really wants to have, you know, a clarity, is, you know, what's really going on here. I want precision. Neptune is saying, oh, it's roundabout. It's kind of like, you know, I mean, we're all one, right? We're all one. You know, Neptune's got that big spiritual heart. It is a higher vibration of the lovely, aesthetic, artistic Venus, and many visual arts are inspired by Neptune. And then you go way out here on the outer fringes, and they, you know, in the last couple of decades, they have gone out even beyond Pluto into the trans-Neptunian asteroids and planets and small worlds. But Pluto is still over here, even though the astronomers kicked it out, the astrologers kept it in. You know, they're not going to be pushed around. And Pluto is yet another transpersonal planet that is a bit suspect. It is got some secrets, and it is curious about your secrets, and it wants to know what's going on behind the curtain. It is the god of the underworld. And one of the interesting things that I find a wonderful synchronicity, and you know, that was a Jungian idea of synchronicity. It's a coincidence, but it's not a coincidence. That in 1930 is when it was discovered, and this was right in, you know, the Prohibition time. And this was a stupid experiment by the American government, with some good ideas. I think their intentions were good, with this idea that alcohol is the root of all evil, and it's messing up families, and people are becoming addicts, and so we have to really stop it. And so then they wanted to legislate alcohol, as you all know, from a prohibition. And how did that work? The underworld really came forth in the late 20s into the 1930s during the Prohibition, when they said, no, it's illegal. And a bunch of people said, oh yeah, well, we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And that's very Plutonian. And if you can't do it legally, we're going to do it illegally, but we're going to do it.
Yep.
Then we had the speakeasies. Then we had, you know, the gangsters. We had the underworld during that same time. What an interesting coincidence that was. And so it tells you a little bit more about the power of Pluto and what it does. And it's very slow movement around the zodiac, 248 years to go around the zodiac. The interesting thing going on right now is that Pluto's coming back to where it was in the United States chart. It was at 27 degrees Capricorn in 1776. And within 2 years, it's going to be right back there again. And what was happening, you know, with the colonists having yet a revolutionary opportunity against England with Mad King George, we might have some similarities going on right now.
Wow.
And we have got a lot of rebel rousers and revolutionary talk right now. And us astrologers were saying, we are not surprised. It's pretty much right on cue, and is coming to the very same degree, very same sign, very same place that it was at the beginning of the American experiment.
Wow.
Very fascinating how it all works, huh?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's a real quick intro into the planets. Here's another nice perspective here. These are the actual sizes in comparison to each other within our solar system. You see, of course, how huge the sun is. And we think we're quite special. But look at Earth.
It's tiny.
Easily overseen. You can hardly see Pluto in this picture.
Nope.
But the largest planet, of course, is Jupiter. And, you know, in comparison with the sun, it is rather small.
Mm-hmm.
Is our theater troupe. This is the group here that you will find in your charts, in every chart. And this is our neighbors. We're all moving around each other. And I find it very interesting to get these, you know, individual visual perspectives. This brings us then to the zodiac and to the 12 signs of the zodiac. And as you know, the sun will go, you know, for 30 days, 30 degrees, excuse me. Sometimes that's, you know, with our calendar, which is even has, you know, February with only 28 days, sometimes 29 days every fourth year. So the calendar months do not fit very well into the 12 signs of the zodiac, which is why, you know, it's going to be on the 21st, approximately 22nd, that it will have our June summer solstice, and then it'll begin the Cancer time. And then again, as far as the sky is concerned, as far as this zodiac is concerned, so it's very precise. It's our calendar upon the earth that we have to like add a couple minutes. Was it on this day? Are you on the cusp? You know, are you actually a Pisces? Are you an Aries? You know, we have to calculate it to make sure it's really quite true. But in the sky itself, if we take a look at, again, just the 30-degree zodiac, it's very clear. 30 degrees, and then it goes to the next sign. There is an argument by those who are more involved with astronomy, because they look at the constellations in the sky and they do not match the zodiac. And so there's several, let's say, zodiacs, but what I use here in the West is what's called the tropical zodiac. And so we use the key points, those key times, those exact minutes when it goes into the equinox or into the solstice, and that divides the signs. Right. You know, that's why I'm saying right now it's Gemini, it's soon going to be Cancer, and it happens during the summer solstice, and it goes on into the autumn equinox, and that will be the beginning of Libra. And that's how we in the West, in a tropical zodiac, that's how it's divided. If you look, however, into the constellations, the actual stars in the sky, it's really quite different, which is almost, they say, there's argument about this, there's 24 degrees difference between the constellation sign and our tropical zodiac. And so for all of the astronomers, when they look at the signs, and they're talking about, let's say, Scorpio or Libra or Capricorn, they will be looking at a different part of the sky than we would with this tropical zodiac. So it's really good for you to know that early on, because from time to time, you're going to come across somebody who is going to be using a Hindu or a Jyotish perspective, and they pay more attention to the actual constellations compared to our Western tropical zodiac. And it's good to know why there are these two different zodiacs. And I've been using this particular one. The funny thing about it, though, is that when you pay attention to the constellations in the sky, some signs are like 38 degrees, or I think Cancer is 18 degrees, rather small. And so they're different sizes. And so back here, just looking at the tropical, each sign is 30 degrees. And I have looked at it for more than 30 years, and I find that it works quite well. And so I'm pretty fine with it. And so that's the zodiac that I use. Here is an interesting thing called an analemma, and this is the positions of the sun as it goes around the whole zodiac. And very likely you have all seen those globes, and it's over in the Pacific, you know, where there's a little bit more space. You'll see one of these images, you know, and it's a figure 8. And
infinity.
you all have seen those, right? On globes. Yeah. And it's a lovely picture, because it really shows how uniform it is and how it flows in very regular sorts of ways. It is a cosmic dance in the sky that is very regular. And this is a picture taken once a month. And where is the sun at a particular time? Once a month. No, it's I think it's more than once a month, but different times of the year. And up here at the very top, and the smaller circle up here, this is the summer solstice. And that's at, June 21st, June 22nd, whenever that happens here. And of course, it's at the very top. And so we have our sun very strong here in the north, and that's when we have our summers. This is the beginning of summer. And then from there, it has its longest day, 3 days approximately. And then it turns around, and then our days get shorter and shorter. And then it comes down this way until we have here in the middle, this is the equinox points, whether that be Aries or Libra, and that's visually in the sky. And then the longer points, it has that slow move on into the winter, all the way down here to the winter solstice, and that's the beginning of Capricorn. So I just like this image because it just shows there is a very clear path, and it makes sense, and there is a meaning in all of it. We, of course, look at things from our own globe. And I was talking about the globe, and you'll find the analemma on a globe. But this is from an old Arabic image. And they studied, of course, a lot of the stars, and we have certain names of stars, many stars, coming from the Arabic lands. And they too studied astrology. And so there was a mixture of ancient Egyptian, Greek, also the Indians in the Indian subcontinent. They all were studying astrology. It goes back thousands of years. And they were making their calculations and seeing how everything flows together. And this just, a nice example of how they were plotting the placements of the different signs, the times of the year, also the times of the day, sunrise, the sun in the middle of the sky, middle of the day, noon, then sunset. And we've got all of these different cycles happening, and we put it together into our astrology charts. I tend to look at all of this movement here as a cosmic record player. And here we have the music of the spheres. You might have heard about that. And Mercury might be playing like a nice high note, like the birds chirping, or the electrical wires having that buzz sound because you got some information going fast. And then Venus, a little bit more aesthetic and nice, melodic and beautiful, and then Mars with the drums, boom, 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 marching drums and things like that. All the planets have kind of like a music, sound, and energy. And I like this image here because when we take a look at how they all move together, there's going to be some times that here we are in June in the north. It's summer. It's warm. The birds are there, the butterflies, the flowers are there. I mean, it's a lovely time, and it happens, springtime into summer. And that's just the solar phase. That's the sun in its phase. Every single planet has its own cycle. And they are all singing their songs. And we can put it on a record player. And that record player is our chart. And then we have to watch out for stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's too late, mother.
I understand everything. Yep.
No, Jimmy, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
The glyphs, the images, you know, all of these glyphs right here are the just shorthand
Yeah.
for
The
different
architects.
planets. And then we have the shorthand glyphs or signs. And this just makes it easier for you to put a lot of information into a short space. And then you too can become cosmic.
Oh, I've seen this one.
Here's a quote from Genesis. This a classic here too. And now we have the lunar path. You saw that with the solar analemma, it has its great movements that takes the whole year, 360 degrees. But in 1 month, the moon is also making its lovely images. And this is again from one particular perspective. You know, when the, you know, where is the moon at any particular time? They take a picture of it from over here on the left-hand side, where it is the new moon, just a small crescent moon. It gets larger and larger and larger. Here it is, you know, halfway there until it comes over here to the full moon right here in the middle. And we just, of course, had our full moon the last couple of days. And when I say, you know, we had our full moon yesterday at 2 in the afternoon, that's just the exact aspect. Usually, of course, at full moon, you can feel for 2 days. If you're sensitive, you can feel it for 3 days. Isn't that true, Jeannie?
Yep. I'm still feeling it.
Yeah, me too. I had to take a nap today.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the full moon, since we're having one, we're just, you know, at the tail end of one right now. Not all full moons are going to affect you in the same way. This last one, of course, was a Sagittarius full moon, opposite of the sun in Gemini. And it was an eclipse because the shadow of the Earth was over the face of the moon. And that's an eclipse. That's a lunar eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
First picture that I showed you, of course, was the moon right in front of the sun, a solar eclipse. But in a lunar eclipse, what I have found over years is that whatever your typical pattern is, the moon is going to reverse it for a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
So if you always like to be neat and tidy, during the full moon, forget about it. It's going to be a mess.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't drink at all, you might find that you might want to take a glass of wine.
Yep.
During a full moon. If you're naturally calm,
Yep.
have a full moon, you might be very irritable and you know, get into a fight. You know, it is an extremist of the emotions, and the moon pulls the water upon the earth. And of course, we have the lunar tides, low tides, high tides, and especially during, you know, a new moon and a full moon, the tides are especially strong. And what are we inside of our bodies? What's the percent of us as water? Like 70% or so?
Yep.
So we too are being pulled,
Old.
tugged, and inspired with ideas and feelings and reactions, all connected to Luna, lunacy,
Lunatic.
lunatic, and feelings that we have about being here upon the earth. And what is there to feel here? Food, security, family, those things that make me feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Very lunar things. And when we talk about your moon sign, we're going to be talking about those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one would expect, and they have found emergency medical technicians, police people, hospital personnel, they have all seen that during a full moon, there's going to be more problems. There's going to be some more issues. And so I personally am not surprised that during this time of crazy reactions and protests and demonstrations that, again, in the last 3 days, it got really wild.
Yeah.
And people were out there doing things that normally they wouldn't do. Yeah, it's a full moon and an eclipse, making it stronger.
Stronger emotions.
Strong emotions being pulled, you know, into the extremist forms.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share with you in a bit, you know, what's happening in the United States, because, you know, the US also has a chart.
Mm.
It's being aspected quite strongly. I already mentioned the Pluto return, but there's other things going on here too. But yeah, so it's not only lovely to see, again, that kind of figure 8, that eternity symbol in the movement of the moon, but we saw that also with the sun.
I've seen this before.
The signs, the modes, the elements, and we have come across those different elements, and this is what you're going to find. People who probably don't know a lot about it, but they'll have their ideas about what these different signs.
This is me and Eve. We eat our emotions. Look at your fire. Look at the fire.
Look at them. Ah!
Sorry, that's you. This is my husband. So sarcastic.
Oh, funny. Yeah. So yeah, it's always good to, you know, get a fun perspective on these different
I
things.
need that meme.
One also has to be careful, you know, of being like too,
Yeah, trust me.
you know, about the charts too.
Mhm.
So again, back to the planets itself, they are all moving. They all have their particular cycles. They all will take a certain amount of time to go around the zodiac. And there will be phases in your time, in your experience, in which, let's say, Venus becomes very strong.
Mhm.
Talked about the moon being strong. And then maybe for the 2 weeks from now, Mars is going to have like its 3 or 4 days of strong impetus. But then when we get to Pluto, it will take 2 years or more for it to do its thing. So sometimes, like with Mercury, you know, 1 day, 2 days, you've done your, you know, Mercury transit, and Mercury likes that. It likes to go fast. It wants to do it right now. Let's get it done. I'm out of here, you know. And then the other planets, how slow they are, but they're all doing their dance, and it's really fascinating how they all kind of work together, and they all have their own particular emphases, interests, talents, and perceptions. Probably something that I imagine you, Jeannie, interested in are the shamanic and druidic times of the year.
Yep.
These are kind of like the holy times, the special celebration points. And I've already mentioned, of course, the equinoxes and the solstices, but those midpoints, 45 degrees between those 4, brings us the 8 holy times of the year. And this is, again, thousands of years old. They had these calculated, and these were special times in order to do rituals, ceremonies, Kabbalistic understandings, shamanic points of power. Yep. And we have, you know, it's just really interesting and useful to know these different times. And as I'm thinking of it in this way, it is really powerful to use the new and the full moons to get things done. To have an idea or a plan or a hope or a dream that can be, let's say, if not manifested, at least started in a very concerted way within a month, because we get, you know, the month comes from the word moon. And choosing, let's say, if you want to start something and expand it. Choose a time to get together with your friends on a new moon. And on those new moons, making those compacts, those plans, those special times that say, this is lacking in my life. This is something that I want to have in my life, or this is an attitude or a trait or a talent that I want to build on. And so the new moon is waxing from there. It builds, it grows from the new moon as it goes 2 weeks later to the full moon. And then you can have your full moon ceremonies, gatherings, and so forth, recognizing that things might get loony, but that could be fun, especially when the temperature's nice and warm. So the lunar times that you get together for your ceremonies and your power rituals, what is it that you want to say goodbye to? You want to have leave, whether that be weight, whether that be worries, whether that be bad habits, you know, if you want to sell your home, if you want to, you know, get rid of or pass on some physical material things, you know, that's a good time for the full moon. What has come to its fruition, you can thank it for being in your life. You can thank that situation or what it has served you in your life. And now it says, goodbye, you know, thank you. It's time to retreat. And that again will be a 2-week phase until you go into the next new moon. And so you can have these wonderful times approximately every 2 weeks that you can do magical things and insights and things that you will notice having, let's say, the energies of the planets, of the moon, of the earth, of the sun on your side, helping you to accomplish things.
Oh yeah.
This is something that we are dealing with. This is an astrology chart.
Mm-hmm.
I just use this as an example. Each of us have our own astrology charts. And in any chart, this is just a universal way of looking at one. We have here, of course, the circle, the zodiac, and this line right here in the middle, that is the horizon line right here. And so that which is above it are the planets that we can see. That which is below, we can't see that. So up here is up in the sky. This is, as I said, true in any chart. On the left-hand side, over here, that is what we find in the east. And the sun, for instance, rises in the east, and that is your rising sign. That's where your ascendant is. Okay? From here in the east, the sun, let's use the sun as an example, but they all have their rising, you know, all the planets will rise and fall. Then the sun goes up, you know, up to the top of the chart, and that is the noon time. And so if you're born around noon, your sun in your chart is going to be up here at the top. And we see the sun over here. It's the circle with the dot in the middle. The sun for this particular chart here, it's the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. It was on the 12th of January, 2020, and we have been dealing with this dynamic the whole year. In fact, not only that, but also 2019. It's a buildup of power energies between two very strong dynamics, and then we're still dealing with the fallout of that right here in 2020. Everybody's going to remember 2020.
Is this the U.S. thing you were talking to us about?
Yep. My next chart is going to be the U.S. chart, but this is just the alignment of Saturn and Pluto, which again shows up here. You'll see at 22 degrees, 47 minutes. So exactly right to the minute when they aligned, and then I set this for Washington, D.C.
Oh,
You can do this very same, exactly when they aligned for Peking,
okay.
Sydney, for London. And they will all be, all of the planets will be pretty much in the same signs, but they will be in different houses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's, another geographical location on the Earth. Oh, good, good. As I said, I'm looking at this particular conjunction of Saturn and Pluto,
Uh-huh.
and but it's also an example of any astrology chart.
Yeah.
I'll continue that. We see the sun up here at the top,
Right.
and it was in the 9th house, and you can see how they expanded
Right.
the 9th house because there were so many planets in it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice thing about this particular program, and like it's a very
Yep.
busy space, all in Capricorn. So as the sun would continue, it would go over here, and then it would set in the west. And if the sun were right here,
Right.
sunset. And if the sun were down here at the bottom, it would be a midnight chart.
Midnight chart. Yeah.
And that's true with all horoscopes.
Yeah.
This particular one here, when they met, it was at 12:40 p.m. or
Wow.
just after noon. And as I said, I used Washington, D.C. because I was interested in what this particular conjunction had to say about the United States.
Wow.
But this conjunction was true all over the world. And we have now a pandemic. And how could you see a pandemic in this, except, we're talking about two very powerful planets. Sometimes they make people a little bit nervous because they can bring unpleasant things.
Right.
Saturn, as I said, has restrictions, authority, control, reactions to things, a conservative slant that wants to maintain order. Pluto comes in, and remember when Pluto showed during the Great Depression in 1930, it was the middle of 2 world wars, by the way.
Wow.
Pluto is manifesting major changes, transformations, death, and rebirth.
Wow.
They then get together, and the whole world within a short time has pandemics. This is the sign of COVID-19. This is the chart that us astrologers would look at and say, well, how about that? Isn't that really interesting? Even though
all this that's happening, you're like, wow, like we knew something like this was going to happen.
Exactly. As I said, they were leading up to this alignment here in 2019. And we saw the beginnings in 2019 when a lot of people were talking about climate change and that we have to save the earth, that there is destruction all over the place, too much pollution, overpopulation, things like that. And what was also happening in 2019 leading up to this, but we had these fires.
I was just going to say that, the fires.
Yeah, it was like all over the place. California, they had Brazil, and of course, especially in Australia.
Yep.
And one of the other things that you'll notice whenever these two get together is there's going to be mistreatment of animals.
Yes.
And there were what happened in Australia. I mean, they said
animals
died. Okay.
Wow. And
then in China, in the winter, about the wet market system that they have there? Who does not know? Let's see your hand if you do not know about that. Okay, yeah. So it's really an ugly tradition, very unclean, and they have not only, of course, they have dog too, right? And they've got some other exotic animals, and they sell them there at these wet markets. And they put the cages of these animals on top of each other. so that they're pissing on each other. It's very dirty. It's very unclean. And this was where the virus started. This is where, from a really unclean place. And what's also bad is that they are eating exotic, rare animals. So they gather them and put them into these markets and into these cages. And what a terrible thing. It's a bit like, I believe, Gaia, Mother Earth, is saying, you know, I'm going to like slap you upside the head for all of the
shamans were saying that
stupidity that you're doing, you know, with mistreatment of animals, dirty conditions,
earthquakes,
fires, you know. And so that happened before these two got together. And then after they got together, the illness started, the virus started. It's called, you know, COVID-19 because it was in 2019 and it was in December 2019, just before these two planets got together. And then within a couple of months, we all know what happened then.
Yeah.
Again, the Saturn governments, not only the US, governments got together to try and control something that was started by their own greed, by their own short-sightedness, by mistreatment, by, you know, just a list of things here. I've already mentioned, you know, that we had the underworld, you know, when Pluto was discovered. And when the underworld, or when the criminals and the corrupt side by side, and they are connected, they work with the government, Saturn, we have got dictators, and they're all around the world. And they seem to be very strong, very proud. North Korea, Russia, China, Brazil, and we have got, you know, left and right people in the Trump administration who are going to jail for corruption. And what happened during the wintertime, we had an impeachment trial. Well, it wasn't really a trial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
again, us astrologers, we look at this and say, I am not surprised. It's like, it's happening right on time. But what are we supposed to learn from this? That's the bigger thing.
Right.
Things get very intense when these two heavy hitters come into motion. And so, first of all, we have to reform government, Saturn. It has to die to be reformed into a kinder, gentler, wiser governing force that's going to be justice for all, like it was promised and never really given. So, you know, if you don't do something right, it's going to crumble. If it's built upon sand, it's not going to be a good, firm foundation. And these planets then come together and say, hey, folks, you got to change your plans. You got to come up with a new design. You have to start over again. So all of that is, you know, very much a part of it. Now, take a look now. I haven't really mentioned too much about the houses, but the house system and knowing the houses are very important in understanding your chart. And I just want to point out here, you see how powerful, how busy that 9th house is. I mean, it is full. And the 9th house in anybody's chart, all horoscopes, are international. It's ruled by Jupiter, by the way. So it's higher universities. It's international travel. It is pleasures and adventures, oftentimes connected to cruises, flights, places far away, and also international relationships. Well, where are we finding the biggest economic hit?
Cruises.
Airplanes, airlines. You know,
Airports.
Alenka works at the university. It's really a mess. students are not either not coming or they're asked not to come. We're doing a bunch of Zoom things, so it's really good for, you know, electronic.
My
Zoom.
son is a teacher in China.
Pardon?
My son is a teacher in China. He's working from home.
From home. That's right. Universities, ninth house is really affected,
Yeah.
you know, by this. Also, the ninth house is higher judicial systems like the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
And that has also, you know, with this trial, with the impeachment, as well as with other things connected with William Barr and other things in the United States, with things that are either illegal or they're going to be fought in courts. Again, a classic ninth house thing. No big surprise with that. Then we have got the moon down here at the bottom, and it was the sign of Leo during this time. And so it's going to be an aspect, when you take a look at a chart for a nation, when a chart for a larger system, you read it a little bit differently than for an individual.
Mhm.
So the moon in a personal chart, it's about your feelings, your family also. Things oftentimes you get from your mother, from those female people within your families, as well as the emotions felt within the family. In a national reading, it represents the people, the folk, the citizens, and how they react to things. Well, here in the US, this particular pandemic dynamic, we've got the moon in Leo, and so Leo is the theatrical sign. It is
My son.
extreme. It is what its story. It is what is happening here, and it's brings me also to yet another thing called aspects. You know, and these up here are connected at the ninth house is Saturn Pluto conjunction. By the way, they weren't alone. Mercury was right next to them. The asteroid Ceres was next to them, and even the sun. So all of that is a conjunction, a powerful alignment, which is why this is a powerful time, you know, 2020. But that very same moment, the moon was in Leo, here it is at 17 degrees, and it was making a square to the rising sign over here in Taurus. And so a square is another type of tension, and you have to deal with something. You cannot ignore it. You have to work it out. There is a structural problem, or there's going to be a dynamic that needs to be fixed. You have to repair it. You cannot ignore it. Okay, and the people, the moon, are now having to change all of their normal routines, and a lot of them got rather dramatic about it. You know, on both sides of the coin, saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm very afraid, and it's scary, and I might die, or my family might die." Remember that, you know, theater and, you know, Leo go that in that direction. Or it went in another direction where they say, "Oh, who is the government telling me what to do?" You know, and I, as a free individual, I'm going to do and say what I want to do when I want to do it, and I'm going to go out and get a haircut. Damn it!
Yeah.
So again, even with how it, let's say, unfolded with our citizens, it shows up in this particular chart. All very interesting, and again, people are going to remember 2020 for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that, as I said, it just comes up, you know, luckily not so often, but when they do come, Saturn, Pluto, it is usually the beginning of something that is wrong, it's sick, it's dirty, and it's going to fester into an outbreak of some sort. They got together in the sign of Cancer in 1914 and 1915. And what happened then? That was the First World War.
Wow.
And then things festered, and with all of the fighting, and remember back at that particular war, they were still using mules and horses and for transport and so forth. And so again, animals were hurt during that time. And that festered into the 1918 Spanish flu, a huge pandemic in which they say 40 to 50 million people died, way more than who died in the war. I mean, wow. When you take a look at these, you say, yep, you have to have a lot of respect when Saturn and Pluto get together.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line is that things have gotten out of hand. There is corruption in high places, like in the First World War, and we have to change the system.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutamente.
Well,
And that's how you contact me, right on time.
Look at that.
So again, this was a big tour de force. It was a big overview, lots of different things to share with you. And
It's awesome. Thank you. There was
questions
a
about
lot of
anything?
information that you gave us. It was awesome. It was great. I learned a lot of things. What you
Excellent.
did.
Great. Glad. Yeah.
See, I told you were thorough.
Your brain is full.
Yeah, that was more than I could ever. I mean, you really did a great job laying it out.
Told you.
Yeah. I mean, that was. I'm gonna have to read more and but that was great. Those are things I just never even considered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really fascinating, and it actually, if you really get into it, it'll take years to really feel comfortable in it, and all the different ramifications of it, and how it can be used, and for personal reasons, for psychological interpretations, for relationship studies, for career and goals and so forth, because you can focus on any of those points, and they're all important, but it'll be a never-ending interest once you get into it.
Never. I've been following astrology, and I always learn something. Always, just like tonight, I learned everything. Thank you so much again, Stephen. I'm definitely gonna invite you again, because I'm gonna repeat classes for people who didn't come, and I'm already getting asked if I'm gonna repeat the class. So I hope that you can come back.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
So
Good, sharing this, something that I love with you. And stay safe and enjoy the summer.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank you.